Have you ever stopped to think why millions of people around the world work harder than ever, yet feel less free with each passing year? Why some people can struggle endlessly and never reach financial comfort, while others seem to grow their wealth with little visible effort? What if this system is not accidental at all, but intentionally designed to function this way? What if economic freedom was never meant to be a goal that everyone could reach? Most people believe economic freedom is a matter of personal success. They think that if they work harder, invest smarter, or make the right decisions at the right time, freedom will eventually follow. But the truth is far more unsettling. The system is not built for universal freedom. It is built to ensure that the majority remains dependent. In the modern world, economic freedom is the exception, not the norm. History shows us that this has always been the case. In feudal times, peasants were bound to land. During the Industrial Revolution, workers were tied to factories. Today, people are bound to salaries, debt, and monthly expenses. The form changes, but the logic remains the same. The system must continuously bind human time and labor to something. Because if everyone were economically free, who would work long hours at jobs they dislike? Who would accept low wages? Who would agree to live life in constant debt? Modern economies are built on an invisible balance. A small group controls capital, while the majority depends on income. Wages are calibrated to cover expenses, but not to create freedom. Debt appears to make life easier, but in reality it locks people into the system. Credit cards, loans, installment plans. They allow comfort today while mortgaging tomorrow. As a result, people become unable to take risks, raise their voices, or question the system itself, because they have too much to lose. Economic freedom, however, means breaking this chain of dependence. And that is precisely why it is not desired for everyone. This is never stated openly. No one stands up and says, "Not everyone can be free." But decisions, systems, and rules consistently lead to the same outcome. Money always flows upward, while risks are distributed downward. Workers keep the system alive, while the winners shape and control it. In this episode, we need to clarify one crucial question. Is economic freedom so rare because of individual failure, or because it is structurally limited by design? In the next episode, we will examine one of the core pillars of this system, the wage-based structure, and why it was designed, not to produce freedom, but stability and sustainability, because that is where the system hides its most invisible mechanism. Wage-based work is presented in modern societies as a safe and respectable path. Get into a good school, graduate, learn a profession, secure a stable job, earn a salary, and build your life. At first glance, everything sounds logical. A salary reduces uncertainty. You know how much you will earn each month and can plan your expenses accordingly. But the invisible side of this system is exactly where the truth lies. Salaries are not designed to make you wealthy. They are designed to keep you inside the system. Wages are usually calibrated to cover basic needs, but never enough to create true independence. Rent, bills, food, transportation, and small social expenses. Your salary can keep this circle turning, but it never allows you to step outside it. Because in a wage-based system, you sell your time, and time is the only resource that never returns. The more hours you work, the more you earn. The moment you stop working, income stops as well. This keeps you permanently tied to the system. For salaried workers, taking risks is expensive. The fear of losing a job is often enough to silence a person. Even when treated unfairly, many remain quiet, accept conditions they dislike, and tell themselves, "I'll manage for now," because every monthly paycheck also represents monthly debts that must be paid. This does not nurture freedom. It cultivates obedience. Historically, the wage system expanded massively after the Industrial Revolution. Its purpose was not to grant freedom, but to ensure continuity for factories, offices, and institutions. Today, the logic remains unchanged. Factories have been replaced by office towers, assembly lines by screens. The wage system is often described as the backbone of the economy. But in reality, for this system to function, millions of people must remain economically unfree at the same time. Because if everyone were free, who would continue this structure in its current form? In the next episode, we will examine how the wage system merges seamlessly with debt, and how these two structures together trap people inside an invisible cage. Because this is where the real mechanism reveals itself. The wage-based system alone is not enough to keep people inside the structure. It needs a compatible partner to function smoothly. That partner is debt. Wages tie a person to work. Debt forces them to stay there. Even without a salaried job, debt can still keep someone trapped within the system. In the modern economy, debt is no longer an exception. It has become a norm. Borrowing to buy a home, a car, an education, or sometimes just to survive until the end of the month is considered normal. But this normality is not accidental. Debt is the most invisible barrier standing in the way of economic freedom. The moment you go into debt, you sell your future in advance. You spend money you have not yet earned and accept a burden that can last for years. This burden is not only financial, it is mental. A person in debt cannot easily take risks. Starting a new path, objecting, or questioning the system becomes far more difficult when monthly payments are waiting. Debt quietly limits decision-making. No one tells you that you are not free, but you feel your options shrinking every day. This mechanism does not apply only to individuals. The same logic governs companies and governments. Corporations grow through credit and survive through borrowing. Governments cover budget deficits by taking on debt. As debt increases, dependence grows, and whoever is in debt must comply with the conditions of the lender. This is why debt is not merely a financial tool, it is a balance of power. Who lends and who owes matters deeply. On a societal level, debt calms people. A debt-driven society seeks stability. Change feels risky because uncertainty threatens the ability to repay obligations. As a result, indebted people fear crises, avoid disruption, and resist radical transformation. The idea of "at least things don't get worse" makes accepting the existing order easier. This is a major advantage for those who control the system. Because a society in debt is a quiet society. This is why universal economic freedom is not possible within this structure. The system runs on debt. If debt disappears, obedience weakens. If obedience weakens, the structure itself begins to shake. Debt is the fuel of the system, and as long as this fuel continues to flow, freedom will remain limited. In the next episode, we will examine more clearly why this system does not want everyone to be free, and why freedom is always reserved for a limited few. Economic freedom is often presented as a universal goal. People are told that the harder they work, the more they earn, and the more they earn, the freer they become. But this narrative hides a crucial truth. The existing system was not built on the idea that everyone can be economically free. On the contrary, for the system to remain stable, the majority must stay within certain limits. Because if everyone were free, who would keep the system running? In an economy where everyone is debt-free, independent, and financially secure, who would take low-paying jobs? Who would accept risky work, long hours, and exhausting conditions? The system answered these questions long ago. This is why economic freedom is positioned as a reward, a goal that only a small number of people can reach, while the rest are encouraged to keep chasing it. In this way, the majority continues to work within the same structure, fueled by the hope that one day it will be my turn. At this point, the education system, career narratives, and success stories step in. A handful of winners are put on display. If they did it, you can too, people are told. At the same time, The millions who did everything right but still failed are made invisible. The system highlights exceptions and hides the rule. Because the rule is simple, not everyone can win. Some must lose for balance and order to be maintained. Another reason freedom is kept limited is control. Economically independent individuals are less afraid. People who are less afraid question more, and people who question more are harder to manage. That is why the system neither leaves people completely desperate, nor allows them to become fully free. It maintains a careful balance, enough hope to keep them moving, enough pressure to keep them compliant. When this balance breaks, crises emerge. People either become too desperate or too bold. Both situations are dangerous for the system. That is why economic freedom is not designed for everyone. It becomes a controlled privilege, selectively distributed by those who hold power. And most people go through their lives without ever being given the chance to question why this limit exists. In the next episode, we will explore how these limits are made invisible, why people accept this order as natural, and how the idea of economic freedom is turned into a motivation tool that keeps the system running. If the truth that economic freedom is not accessible to everyone were stated openly, this system could not survive for long. That is why it does not build its limits with hard walls, but with invisible assumptions. Most people never realize there is a barrier in front of them. They simply think, more was not meant for me. Some even begin to believe they are personally unsuccessful. And this is the strongest form of control, preventing people from even questioning the existence of the barrier. The system first achieves this through language. Poverty is labeled as failure, wealth as intelligence, debt as normal, and insecurity as temporary. In this way, structural problems are reframed as personal choices. Instead of questioning why they cannot move forward despite working hard, people begin to see themselves as inadequate. They believe they must work harder, be more patient, complain less. This mindset suppresses resistance and increases compliance. Education and career narratives are another key part of this invisibility. Schools do not teach how the economic system works. They teach how to find a place within it. Salaried work is presented as the safe path, while risk-taking is portrayed as suitable only for a small minority. For most people, economic life becomes defined by regular income and debt payments. Over time, this becomes normal. People start shaping their dreams only within the limits the system allows. Another powerful tool is comparison. People are encouraged to compare themselves with those below them. At least I have a job. At least I can pay my debts. These thoughts prevent people from demanding more. The system trains individuals not to look upward, but sideways and downward. This keeps the limits invisible. The idea of economic freedom itself becomes the system's most effective motivational tool. Not everyone can be free, but everyone is made to believe they could be. Because hope is one of the strongest instruments of control. This belief keeps the system standing. People begin to see freedom not as a right, but as a privilege that must be earned. And as long as this perception remains unchanged, the limits are never questioned. In the next episode, we will examine the psychology this system creates in individuals and why so many people struggle to break free from this cycle. The reason economic freedom is not possible for everyone is not a lack of talent, personal failure, or bad luck. The real reason is that this system was never designed to treat freedom as a collective right, but as a limited reward reserved for a specific group. The system does not want everyone to be economically free, because that would mean its end. If everyone were free, who would work? Who would borrow? Who would obey? These questions would remain unanswered. That is why economic freedom is kept alive as a dream for the majority. But its realization is not truly desired. Here, a painful truth must be faced. Economic freedom is necessary for a small number of people, so that the system can continue. The large majority exist to keep the structure running. Workers, consumers, borrowers, waiters, the system depends on these roles. And the more unquestioningly these roles are accepted, the more smoothly the system operates. People often cling to the system with the hope that I can make it, too. This hope motivates, but it also distracts, because real freedom is not simply earning more money. Real freedom is the ability to decide who you spend your time, labor, and life for. And if everyone had that power, the balance of the system would collapse. That is why economic freedom is presented as a goal, but the path toward it is constantly extended. People work one step more, take on one more debt, make one more sacrifice. Yet freedom always remains just ahead. This is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate outcome of the system. So what can an individual do in the face of this reality? Perhaps not everyone will be fully free, but everyone can become more aware. Understanding how the system works and seeing where the boundaries are drawn changes the relationship a person has with themselves. When people realize that the problem is not them, guilt gives way to awareness. And that is where the real break begins. Not everyone can be economically free, but everyone can understand why they are not. This understanding will not destroy the system overnight, but it makes it questionable. And throughout history, every system that changed first became a system that was questioned. Economic freedom may not be granted to everyone, but knowing this may push you to question it, and perhaps even change it. I hope this video offered you a different perspective on economic freedom and increased your awareness. Had you ever thought about economic freedom this way before? Let's discuss it in the comments.